Welcome to Thank you. That's all right, Tom. Thank you. Welcome to Cabinet on the 26th of October. Obviously, good morning. This is our 5th meeting of Cabinet held under the new arrangements. And to remind those who have joined us online, this meeting is a consultation with Cabinet, as I have for the time being delegated the ability to make decisions to the individual portfolio holders. Previously, Cabinet took decisions collectively, but instead of the usual roll call of members to take the decisions, I will seek via a show of hands Cabinet members' general agreement or disagreement with the recommendations of each of the reports. And following this consultation, the decisions of the individual portfolio holders will be published on or before Wednesday, the 27th of October and implemented the following week from the 4th of November, unless a call-in procedure is invoked. So move into the main part of the meeting. So apologies for absence. I believe we have none.
None, Chair.
Thank you. Announcements from Chairman and or Head of Paid Service. I have no announcements. Mark, do you have any announcements?
None, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest on this? No, I'm not seeing any declaration of interest. Thank you. So item 4 is record of decision to confirm the record of decisions made at the meeting of Cabinet held on the 21st of September, and that's pages 3 to 8 on today's papers. So are we happy to, with a show of hands, approve those? Fantastic. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 5 is items raised by scrutiny. I don't believe there are any other.
Not to this meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much. And therefore we move on to item 6, which is the bus service improvement plan, and I hand over to Councillor Stevenson to present this paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hemsley. Also, please note, members, we've got Dr. Johnson here, our Senior Transport Manager, who will be able to assist with any detailed or technical questions, or indeed pick up on anything important that I have missed out in my presentation. Before I present the actual paper, I'd like to start with an emphatic truth about rural public transport. It is incredibly challenging to deliver. We know that from resident feedback. We can see that in terms of the challenges with the frequency of our services, often hourly or 2 hourly, the times of travel, because obviously a service will be going through lots of different places to get to its end destination. The cost, our fares are relatively expensive. The result is that for the majority of our residents, the private car is the most convenient option. Clearly, if we are to improve bus services, our aim needs to be to increase bus usage generally. At the moment, the majority of our services are non-commercial. They require a subsidy from the authority to make sure that they can run. Currently, this is at £485,000 a year. And then if we add on top of that, we need to reimburse for the cost of bus passes, which currently sits at approximately 260,000. So we've now got a national context to consider. In March of this year, Boris Johnson announced a £3 billion funding pot for buses to come back better after the COVID pandemic, although I think it should be noted we are still very much in the midst of that. With that came a request for authorities, local authorities, to create a bus service improvement plan. And I would just like to note at this point that the guidelines from the DFT came through on May the 17th. Officers obviously are very mindful that ultimately it is the DFT who will say yes or no to our funding application. This is reflected in the paper in front of you. In the paper in front of you, it outlines, and I should absolutely emphasise this, is a living document. It means that it can change. Certainly after this Cabinet meeting, as per the recommendations, Rebecca and I will be meeting up just to put the final touches, most importantly, that executive summary, which will be the front-facing document for our residents. I obviously have shared this with members, and I would like to thank them for their input and their feedback on the paper in front of us. There are a couple of highlights that I would like to share that I think capture what we need to aim for with our best network. Connectivity, making sure that residents actually can use our transport system to connect to other transport offers such as trains. Access to health, and that is a particular note at the moment, as I'm sure Councillor Walters will say, with the various plans that are in the public domain at the moment. Access to leisure and recreation, access to shopping, access to basic amenities. But this highlights a fundamental truth as well. If we are to move forwards providing a rural network transport system that is fit for the future, we can't just focus on any one group. We need to be able to have a transport system that is reliable, cost effective, with far more frequent services, so that it becomes a real choice in terms of our transport. My first thought isn't, how do I get to A to B? Oh, I'll jump in my car. My first thought is, actually, can I access this using our public transport network? DRT, demand responsive transport, is featured heavily in this document, and I believe that that is something that absolutely could enable me to answer yes to that question. Can I use public transport in Rutland to access what I need when I need it? There is a massive caveat with this, and it's outlined in the paper. Money, as ever, is the root need for this. We absolutely need the DFT to support us financially, and I don't mean a little drop in the ocean as we've seen in the past, where we've been able to put on a tourism bus or a workers bus. Significant funding for us not to start from scratch, work on the good services that we have and build those across the county. This is our opportunity, fellow Cabinet colleagues, to make sure that Rutland's foot is firmly in the door for that funding. And so therefore, I would absolutely ask that you endorse the recommendations and you enable the senior transport management, me and the other officers in the transport team to add any tweaks that we need to make sure that Rutland has the best chance possible to get the money it needs to give a proper rural public transport service in this county. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions. Anything too technical, I shall hand over to Dr. Johnson.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So I would ask, does Cabinet have any questions or comments? Councillor Walters, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I welcome the introduction, and I particularly thank Councillor Stevenson for the comments on health. And you're right, I will mention it. So looking at section 2.7, integrating bus service improvement with other strategic documents. Does Councillor Stevenson think that we should include in those documents the place-based health plan, so that if there are opportunities for this service to integrate with plans for health infrastructure, then we have that covered? And I have a much more minor question, perhaps for Rebecca Johnson. In the guidelines for preparing this document, are we required to use the word scholar instead of student, because the two things are different? But more importantly is the health question.
Right. Thank you for that, Councillor Walters. So looking at 2.7, clearly the local transport plan, which was passed in, I believe, 2018, off the top of my head, possibly a bit later than that. I would suggest, though, that our corporate plan, I would anticipate that that will also be reflective of emergent health plans. And I would certainly suggest, and I shall glance over at Dr. Johnson, I would certainly suggest it would be very foolhardy not to look at all that hard work, which I'm sure has carefully considered transport needs from our health partners. And I'm handing over to you there.
Yes, no, absolutely. That is certainly something we can do. And in answer as well to the other question, the guidance doesn't require us to use the word scholar. No, we can use the word student, but we just have to make sure we're very careful about defining the different types of students, obviously, within the county.
Thank you for that. Does that help, Councillor
Yeah,
Walters?
if I can come back. So, yeah, I'm sure the document is perfectly fine, and so long as we have an understanding that we'll include health in some way, that's great. I'm sure Dr. Johnson is correct, and we need to define the difference between a student and a pupil, but there is also a difference between a scholar and a student. All scholars are students, but not all students are scholars.
Thank you for that. Councillor Payne, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just Lucy, could you just confirm, and Rebecca too probably, that my understanding is that what we've got on the table in front of us has been written for the DFT with the DFT guidelines, and it's a submission for funding, and that the plan in the future is likely to change dependent on the amount of funding that we need to secure.
Yes, I'm nodding my head vigorously there, Councillor Payne. Absolutely. I think we're very, very aware of the overall financial context of this authority. We have been ambitious, as the DFT has asked for. We are being aspirational. We are under no doubt whatsoever that we need significant additional funding in order to deliver and achieve on those. Clearly, when the DFT have actually given us some financial guidance, the plans are highly likely to change in light of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Wilby, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Really, I just wanted to underscore what Councillor Stevenson has very nicely put forward in her introduction. I think this has been a huge piece of work for Dr. Johnson and the team, and it's a very challenging field. One's only got to stand in London, where you have the opportunity of bus, underground, overland, Shanks's pony, and a taxi to get you from A to B very quickly. Whereas here in our rural idyll, it is just not easy, and there is no panacea to fill everybody's options. But I'm sure the more we apply our brains and the more we apply our thoughts to trying to sort out as many people in the community as we possibly can to get an efficient service, then we will, go from strength to strength. And as Councillor Stevenson has said, this is a living document, and it will grow as technology develops and as things go. We're in an area of digitalization now, which we would never have dreamt we were going to be in some time ago. And all our needs are changing rapidly. So I think this is a good start of a 10. Let's hope we get some more money just to keep our thoughts going forward and to continue in this process.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wilby. Councillor Rizal, you have your hand up.
Chair, thank you. Firstly, I wanted to thank Councillor Stevenson and officers for a well-presented paper in challenging and difficult times. I'm drawn particularly to the fact that whilst of course we should include health in our considerations, that is not in isolation. And in real terms, we should consider education, we should consider employment, we should consider leisure. But of course, these documents can't facilitate for everybody. They can't facilitate for individuals. And when we talk about the changing environment, that changing environment affects every facet of what we do. So we don't yet know what health will look like. We don't yet know what leisure will look like. These things will come. But I fully endorse the paper. In difficult times, it is a strategic document with operational and tactical effect that will follow over time. But thank you again to officers for their considerable effort.
Thank you. Mark, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted just something to, number one, manage expectations, and number two, I guess, to voice a little bit of frustration of the approach of government at the moment. So there's a 3 billion funding stream that we just talked about. If you look at some of the bids that are coming in at the moment, you've taken North Lincolnshire, 39 million. The Northeast as a region, you're talking 800 million. There isn't going to be enough money to go around, and there's a question mark of whether some authorities will not be funded at all or whether there'll be smaller amounts. Everyone is going to have to manage their expectations off the back of whatever decision DFT make. But the difficulty is obviously when you look at the Bus Back Better strategy and you look at some of the prescriptive way that government are expecting us to do this beauty contest to try and win this money, you end up in a situation where actually we're shoehorning our need into a framework that doesn't quite fit for us. And it's quite frustrating, I think. And actually, we need to make a decision in the future just about how we plan and develop work against the needs of our community. Because if we're just going to chase government money, we end up chasing things that don't quite fit with our community. And there's no doubt that some of the things that DFT are talking about are very much urban-esque in their way. You know, when they talk about transformation, they're talking about things that would never exist in Rutland because you don't need them and you could never have them. We're not going to have a tram, are we? Let's face it. So I think that, you know, we do need to think more clearly about how we develop our options going forward. There is a particular style to what they're asking for here. It's very frustrating. It's quite restrictive. But let's play the game. Let's see where we get to, and then we can take stock afterwards.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that. And so any other questions or comments? No. So I guess, Lucy, you are happy to propose this item. I'm happy to second it. Item 1 was approves the council draft bus service improvement plan, or BSIP. Authorise the chief executive or strategic director for places in consultation with the portfolio holder for communities, environment and climate change to approve any amendments to the BSIP, along with any alterations required in LTP4 to reflect the changes associated with the BSIP. 3, note that the BSIP is an outline document at this stage and does not represent the council's definitive or immutable commitment or statement of intent. 4, note that the BSIP and revised LTP4 are subject to ratification by council. I'm happy. Oh, sorry, Rebecca, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just wanted to add that the chairman has waived the call-in period for this decision as well, given its urgency.
Thank you very much. So that makes it even simpler, I guess. So by a show of hands, can we show that we support the portfolio holder on this, please? I believe that is unanimous. Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 7, which is 0 to 19 Healthy Child Programme reprocurement. And I believe this is Councillor Wilby is taking this one. You're on mute there, sir.
Thanks very much, Chair. I've got this a very brief introduction from me. It's an important programme, a Healthy Child procurement programme, and I'm going to hand over straight away to the DCS, Dawn Godfrey, who will give you the nuts and bolts associated with it. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Councillor Wilby. So the paper in front of you is asking you to approve the proposed service model for the Healthy Child Programme and delegate authority to the Director of Public Health and the portfolio holders for health, wellbeing and adults and Education and Children's Services to award the contract, and further to delegate authority to myself and the Director of Public Health to determine the service model for the 11+ age group. The Healthy Child Programme is a mandated programme, health programme, mandated by the Department of Health, and to that end, the 0 to 11 element of the programme is the bulk of the programme. That's a statutory element of the programme where there is very little flexibility in the service that has to be provided, as detailed in the report. The 11+ element, which is a much smaller element of the Healthy Child Programme, we have more flexibility and discretion as to how that element of the programme can be delivered, and that's why we want to delegate authority and do more work on what that service model may look like. The current programme, the current 0 to 19 Healthy Child Programme is will run until the end of August 2022, and the new contract will start on the 1st of September 2022. There is a procurement timeline that's at Appendix B. I just want to draw your attention to there's a typo in that procurement timeline. So on the invitation to tender, it says 7th of October. The invitation to tender will actually be published on the 7th of December. So that was the typo. In terms of the funding for this programme, it is fully funded by the Public Health Grant to the tune of 513,000 per annum. There's been a small increase on the previous contract of £6,000 for the new contract, and that is to provide the additional check at the 3 to 3.5 year point before a child starts school. As I said, it's the 0 to 11 is largely mandated, in fact wholly mandated, and it's the 11 plus that where we're still working up what that service model may look like. Part of the reason where while we're still working up that service model is because as you can see in the paper at 7.2, there's only a very small amount of money from the overall contract value that is put aside for the 11 plus. And we want to make sure that we're not going to duplicate any of the other services that are currently going into that age group. For example, the mental health support teams, which are health teams in schools. That's an example of something that's actually already happening outside of the 0 to 19 Healthy Child programme. So we obviously don't want to duplicate any of that other work. I will invite any questions at that point.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you ever so much for really, really clear paper. Just looking at the 5.7 about the 11 plus service, I'm really pleased to see the mental health featuring there for young people. And I know there's a huge amount of work happening in the authority, in schools and with partnership organisations. And I would just like to underscore the importance there. Anecdotally, from teaching experience, that is something that can be very stressful for parents if they've got a young person who is not hitting thresholds for CAMHS, but certainly would benefit from some early intervention. And I think seeing that in the paper really highlighted is very pleasing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walters, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I welcome the paper and the way that it's written. For your reassurance, I did take a deep dive into this one with the DCS to make sure that I was totally happy. I think it's particularly reassuring that we have some crossover with the Health and Wellbeing Board, insofar as that Mike Sands, Director of Public Health, is overarching on this one. And of course, we have put the portfolio holder for children as the second member of the Health and Wellbeing Board. So we can tie this whole thing together with the place-based local health plan. So I like the way it's all working and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So I'm taking that Councillor Wilby is proposing and Councillor Walters is seconding it. Thank you. So the portfolio holder and consultant with Cabinet approved the proposed service model, the joint procurement with Leicestershire County Council and proposed award criteria, delegate authority of the Director for Public Health in consultation with the portfolio holder for health, wellbeing and adult care and portfolio holder for education and children's services to award the contract or contracts resulting from this procurement in line with the award criteria. And 3, delegate authority to the Strategic Director for Children's Services and Director of Public Health to determine the service model for the 11 plus age group in consultation with the portfolio holder for health, wellbeing and adult care and the portfolio holder for education, children's and services. Can I have a show of hands to show that we're in support of this for the portfolio holder? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8, which is the agency and interim workers procurement. And this is my paper. So Cabinet, it is proposed that approves a temporary exemption to the contract procedure rules when securing agency or interim workers. and approves recommended variation as outlined in the paper for the period up until the 25th of October 2022. The reason for this is that the current provision we have actually ended in September 2021 with Matrix. And while it was a solution, it maybe didn't deliver quite as what we were hoping for. And we have been looking at alternatives, and there is a potential to work with Lincolnshire County Council, but that system would only become available from September 2022. So for the duration, rather than setting something up for the very short term to make this work, there is a proposal that we will have an exemption to the current proposals. And the paper before you basically has outlined, and obviously there will be a very clear supervision and oversight on this to make sure. And I'm happy to take questions on this. Thank you. I'm prepared to propose this. Are there any questions on the paper? Fantastic. Okay, so can somebody second it for me, please? Thank you, Councillor Rozelle. So we now have to approve a temporary exemption of the contract procedure rules when securing agency or interim workers, and approves the recommended variation as outlined in this paper for the period up to until the 25th of October 2022. Can I have a show of hands for support, please? Thank you very much. That is unanimous. Thank you. So I believe that, are there any items of urgent business? No. So I think that leaves me to close the meeting at 10:26. Thank you very much all for your attendance. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.